A man doesn't fall in love when you give him your body, your time, or your constant attention. Words. He falls when you give him something he can't find anywhere else. Emotional safety. Words. This is the truth nobody told you, because too many people are still trying to win love through performance. Words. Perfection or manipulation. But love, real love, is not a transaction. It is not about impressing. It is not about always being available. Backwards. It is not about proving that you're different from the rest. No. Real love, the kind that lasts. Words. The kind that transforms a man from guarded to open. Backwards. From hesitant to devoted, happens when he finds something in you that allows him to finally lower his weapons. When he finds a woman who doesn't compete with his masculinity, sounds backwards, doesn't try to dominate his direction, but instead creates an atmosphere around her that whispers. Words. You can exhale here. That is when everything changes. Emotional safety is not something you say. Words. It's something you are. It's a frequency. It's how you respond when he shares his dreams. Words. It's how you handle his silence, his stress, his fears. It's your tone, your eyes, your patience. Words. It's the absence of judgment in the presence of truth. Because every man, no matter how confident he looks, carries scars. Scars from childhood, from betrayal. Words. From performance pressure, from always having to man up and never being allowed to fall apart. Words. He was told not to cry, not to feel, not to break down. So most men walk around armored. Words. Smiling on the outside, but terrified on the inside. And then he meets you. Not the most perfect woman. Words. Not the woman who knows all the rules. Not the woman who plays every game. But the woman who sees him. Words. Not just his status. Not just his money. Not just his body. But his soul. That woman, backwards, the one who can sit in stillness and not rush to fix him, not rush to change him, backwards, but simply be present with him, is the woman he starts to love without even understanding why. Words. Emotional safety isn't loud. It isn't glamorous. It's not even obvious at first. It's subtle. Words. But it's unforgettable. It's in how you hold space. Backwards. How you allow the moment to exist without trying to control it. Backwards. How you make him feel like he doesn't have to perform for your love. Backwards. Because when a man realizes that he is safe to be flawed, safe to feel, safe to question, backwards, he will begin to love you with a loyalty that cannot be bought, taught, or faked. You see, words, most women are taught to make a man desire them, but very few are taught how to make a man trust them. Words. And yet, trust is the foundation of lasting love. Trust isn't built through sex, gifts, backwards, or clever texts. It's built through the slow and sacred process of consistency. Words. Of being exactly who you are without apology, without pretense, backwards, and without constantly adjusting your essence to fit someone's expectations, backwards, because a man can't feel safe around someone who is always shifting to impress. He can't relax around someone who is wearing a mask, woods. But when he meets a woman who is anchored in herself, in her values, woods, in her energy, he starts to loosen. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, woods. It's spark, woods. He starts to exhale. He starts to talk more. He starts to reveal layers he never showed to anyone before, woods. And that's when you know this man is falling. Not because you were everything he wanted, woods, but because you became what he needed. A sanctuary, a safe space, backwards. A place where he didn't have to pretend to be a warrior when inside he felt like a child, woods. And make no mistake, every man has that child inside. The boy who felt unseen, woods. The boy who was punished for being emotional. The boy who learned that love must be earned, backwards. That softness is weakness. That expressing pain is shameful. You can't argue with that boy. You can't heal him with words, but you can reach him with energy, with stillness, with presence, words. When he sees that you don't mock his vulnerability, words. When he notices that you don't use his openness against him, something shifts backwards. His defenses begin to lower. His heart begins to open. That's when love is born. Quietly, silently, backwards, powerfully. But here's the hard truth. Emotional safety isn't something you can fake. Backwards. It doesn't come from pretending to be cool or chill or low maintenance. It comes from deepwards, inner alignment, from healing your own wounds, from not taking his moods personally, words, from being so in tune with your own emotional world that you can hold his without drowning in it. Backwards. That's why the woman a man falls in love with is almost always the woman who has done her own healing. Words. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to be stable, enough to respond instead of react. Words. Enough to understand that his withdrawal is not always rejection. It's sometimes survival, words. That his silence is not absence. It's sometimes protection, words. And when you hold space for a man without demanding that he always explain himself, words. Always show up cheerful, always be on. You give him something sacred, the freedom to be human, words. You offer him the kind of love that is not performance-based. And that is the love that reaches deep, backwards. That's the love that breaks through the layers of pride, fear, ego, and silence, words. That's the love he holds on to when everything else feels like noise. You may not realize it, words, but emotional safety is also about boundaries. It's about what you don't tolerate, words. Because a man feels safest around a woman who honors herself, not the one who lets him walk all over her, words. Not the one who gives in just to avoid conflict, but the one who sets the tone by saying, words, I will hold you, but I will not carry you. I will love you, words, but I will not lose myself for you. That balance of softness and strength is what earns a man's deepest respect. And respect is the soil where love grows. Not admiration, not obsession, but respect. Because love without respect is just attachment. But love rooted in respect, that is loyalty. Backwards, that is devotion. That is the kind of love that lasts decades. Many women try to be everything a man wants, but few ever become what a man trusts. And let me be clear, backwards, trust isn't given lightly, especially not by men who have been burned, abandoned, manipulated, or misunderstood. So when a woman shows up, not to control, not to compete, not to fix, but simply to be, he notices. He may not say it. He may not even know how to describe it. Backwards. But inside, something is shifting. And over time, he will begin to associate your presence with peace. And when that happens, you become irreplaceable. Not because you tried so hard, but because you held so well. You held yourself. You held the moment, You held space without needing to fill every silence. That is what makes a man stay, That is what makes him feel safe enough to love. Here's what no one tells you, You don't have to convince a man to fall in love. You just have to be a space where love can breathe. Where it's not forced. Where it's not rushed. Backwards. Where it's not confused with lust or possession or control. When a man finds a woman who gives love room to grow, who doesn't panic pressure, or punish, he begins to feel something unfamiliar, ease. And for a man who's used to performing, striving and pretending that ease is intoxicating, it draws him in. It makes him curious. It makes him loyal because he can find beauty anywhere. He can find pleasure anywhere. But peace, backwards, that's rare. And when a woman becomes a source of peace in a chaotic world, she becomes unforgettable, backwards. So, if you want a man to fall in love, not just with your looks or your body or your attention, but with you, become the place where his soul can rest. Backwards. Let your love be a gentle invitation, not a loud demand. Let your presence be a mirror, not a mask. Let your energy speak before your words do. Because men don't fall in love with noise, words. They fall in love with nurture, with silence that heals, with touch that doesn't take, with words that don't wound. Backwards. That is the kind of love that doesn't just capture a man, it transforms him, And if you've ever wondered why the most unexpected women sometimes win the heart of the most powerful men, backwards, it's not about beauty. It's not about age. It's not about status. It's no ever did. It sounds backwards. It's about how he feels when he's around her. Does he feel like he has to fight to be understood, or does he feel seen? Does he feel like he's constantly performing? Or does he feel free, Does he feel judged? Or does he feel accepted? A man doesn't fall in love when you say the right things. Words. He falls in love when his nervous system relaxes around you. That's science. That's energy. Words. That's truth. Because love isn't built in chaos. It's born in calm. And you are the calm. Backwards. If you want to be unforgettable, don't try to be sexy. Don't try to be perfect. Try to be safe. Try to be soft. Try to be solid. That's how you make him fall. Not just once, but over and over again. Backwards. And maybe you won't be the loudest woman in the room. Maybe you won't post the thirst traps. Words. Maybe you won't chase or compete or beg. Words. But you'll be the woman he remembers when he's tired of the noise. Backwards. The woman he dreams about when the world feels too heavy. The woman who, without saying much, backwards, made him feel seen, understood, accepted. That is the woman a man falls for. Words. That is the woman he never forgets, not because she tried, but because she knew who she was. Words. And that knowing made her a sanctuary. And every man, no matter how strong, how successful, how stoic, is secretly searching for that sanctuary. And when he finds it, backwards, he stays. He doesn't fall in love with the woman who tries so hard to impress him. Backwards. He falls in love with the woman who reflects his mission, his purpose, his highest potential. Words. That's the deepest truth, the most powerful revelation. Words. The one thing most no one ever teaches women, because we live in a world obsessed with appearance. Words. Attention and attraction. But love isn't built on being the prettiest or the most available. Words. Or the one who tries the hardest to win him over. Real love is not born from seduction. Backwards. It's born from recognition. A man doesn't fall in love with the girl who performs for him. Words. He falls in love with the woman who reminds him of the man he wants to become. Words. Because that kind of woman is rare. That kind of woman is not just desirable. She is transformative. Words. She walks into his life not as an accessory, but as a mirror. She doesn't just make him feel good. Words. She makes him wake up. Something in her presence demands more of him. Not through words. Word. Not through pressure, but through her being, through her confidence, through her standards. Sounds backwards, through her energy. And that is what touches him beyond the surface. Words. That is what makes her unforgettable. A woman like that is not trying to fit into his world. Backwards. She is busy building her own. She is not impressed by his money, his car, or his followers. Backwards. She's impressed by his values, his vision, his consistency, his character. Backwards. And because she operates from a higher level of self-awareness. Words. She triggers in him the desire to elevate, to evolve, to match her. Not because she demanded it, but because her energy commands it. She doesn't need to control him. She inspires him. Words. And that is when a man begins to feel something deeper than lust, deeper than liking. Words. Deeper than chemistry. He begins to feel purpose. He starts to see himself not as he is, backwards, but as he could be. And when a man meets a woman who activates that part of him, he cannot walk away, backwards. He might try. He might get scared. He might pull back. But her energy stays with him upwards because it didn't flatter his ego. It fed his soul. You see, upwards. Most women are trying to be what a man wants, backwards, but the woman he falls for is the one who becomes what he needs without losing herself in the process. Backwards. She's not auditioning for a role in his life. She's already the main character in her own words. She knows who she is. She knows where she's going, backwards. And she doesn't need a man to give her direction. She wants a man who already has his own words. And if he doesn't, she's not afraid to walk away. That energy, that power, that certainty, it's magnetic, it's rare. And it's what makes a man say, she's the one, because she doesn't push him to change. She invites him to rise upwards. And the kind of man who is ready for love, real love, recognizes that invitation and said yes. It's not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of purpose, backwards. A woman who reflects a man's purpose does not make everything easy. She's not always soft and sweet. Words. She challenges. She questions. She holds the mirror up. She's willing to speak truth, words, even if it's uncomfortable, backwards, because she's not here to coddle his comfort zone. She's here to awaken his greatness, words. And that's why she's so different from everyone else. Other women may flatter him, praise him, backwards, chase him. But she sees him. She sees his patterns. She sees his potential. Words. She sees what he could become if he stopped playing small. And her presence dares him to stop hiding. Words. To stop pretending. To stop settling. And that right there is what makes her unforgettable. Words. Because her love is not just affection. It's activation, backwards. And when a man has spent his life surrounded by people who only want what he can give, words, who only love the surface, backwards, who only care about the image, meeting a woman who speaks to his essence is like tasting water for the first time after years in a desert, backwards. She doesn't need to be the loudest. She doesn't need to be the most beautiful, words. She just needs to be aligned. Aligned with herself. Aligned with her values. Aligned with her purpose, words. Because that alignment speaks louder than any outfit, any game, or any words, backwards. And a man who's ready to evolve will sense it. Her energy will shake something loose in him, words. Her silence will be louder than any noise he's ever heard, words. Her presence will be more powerful than anything he's ever chased, words. Not because she's trying to be powerful, but because she is, words. She is the embodiment of grounded femininity, fierce, calm, radiant, unshakable, backwards. And in a world full of women who are still trying to be chosen, she's already chosen herself, words. That's what makes her dangerous to the ego and irresistible to the soul. Words. But here's the thing. This woman, the one who reflects his purpose, is not for every man. She is only for the man who is willing to grow, the man who is willing to look at himself, the man who is ready to do the inner work, because she's not going to babysit his potential. Words. She's not going to mother his wounds. Words. She's not going to wait around for him to figure it out while he entertains chaos. No. Words. She'll love him. She'll support him. She'll even walk beside him. But she won't shrink for him. Words. She won't abandon herself to keep him. Words. And that's what separates her from every woman he's ever known. Words. Because she doesn't lead with fear. She leads with faith. And that faith is not in him. Words. It's in herself, in her vision, in her knowing. And that knowing is what calls him forward, backwards. It's what wakes him up in the middle of the night thinking about her. Words. It's what makes her voice echo in his head when he's tempted to settle. Words. Because she's not a fantasy. She's a standard. And if he's not ready to meet it, words, she's ready to walk away without hesitation. This is what makes her energy unforgettable. Words. It's not just her love, it's her clarity. She knows who she is. Words. And she doesn't bend that identity for anyone. Not even him. Especially not him. Backwards, because she knows that real love does not require sacrifice of self. It requires alignment. Words. It requires two people coming together, not to complete each other, but to expand each other. Words. And expansion is uncomfortable. It stretches. It exposes. It demands truth. Words. And that's why her love is so rare. Because it's not safe for a man who wants to stay small. Words. It's not easy for a man who wants comfort over calling. Words. But for the man who is ready to become, it's everything. So if you're that woman, words, stop questioning your power. Stop dimming your light to be more digestible. Words. Stop trying to be more approachable or on hand, understanding or less intimidating. The right man won't be intimidated. He'll be inspired. Words. He won't feel small around your power. He'll feel seen. Words. He won't try to cage your energy. He'll create space for it. Words. Because he'll recognize that you're not just a partner. You are his mirror, his muse, his motivator. Not because you said all the right things, but because your energy whispered, I see the king in you. Words. But I will not lower myself to beg for his throne. Let other women play the game. Let them chase, words, perform, and pretend. You stay in your lane, you build your life, you follow your calling backwards. And the man who is meant to walk beside you will recognize you, not by how you make him feel, words, but by who he becomes when he's around you. Because the real ones don't fall in love with the image, words. They fall in love with the reflection of truth. And truth, when spoken by a woman who knows her worth, words, becomes the most powerful love language in the world. So be that woman. Be the one who doesn't compete, words. Be the one who doesn't chase. Be the one who simply is, words. And watch how the right man doesn't just fall in love with you, he rises in love with you. Because your presence reminded him of what he was born to become. And that kind of love, words. That kind of love is not ordinary. That kind of love is destiny. The less you chase, words, the more magnetic you become. This isn't just a clever line, it's a universal law of energy, words. The moment you begin chasing something, you energetically declare that it's running from you, words. When you run after a man, when you try to win him, convince him, constantly show up in his space, words. Always message first, always be available, words. You're sending one message over and over again. I need you more than you need me, and nothing shuts down desire faster than desperation, words. Desire doesn't grow in the soil of need. It grows in the energy of choice. Backwards. A man doesn't fall in love with the woman who makes herself smaller just to fit into his life. Words. He falls in love with the woman who is so rooted in her own presence that he can't help but be drawn into her world. Words. Not because she tried to impress him, not because she was always around, but because she wasn't chasing. She was attracting, words. She wasn't forcing connection. She was allowing alignment, words. And sounds backwards. And that's the difference between the woman who is remembered for a moment and the one who is remembered for a lifetime, words. You've been taught to chase, to pursue, to prove, to perform backwards. You were told if you didn't constantly remind him of your worth, he'd forget, words. You were told to always be the one who gives more, texts first, sacrifices your schedule backwards, bends your boundaries, stays patient with the inconsistent, the avoidant, the unready, backwards. But what you were never told is that the moment you begin chasing, you start leaking your value backwards. Because high value energy does not chase. It radiates. It shines words. It stands still and lets everything that's not aligned fall away backwards. The moment you stop trying to pull love toward you and instead embody it, everything changes. He sees it, words. He feels it. He senses that you are not like the rest, words. Because while the others compete for his attention, you command his respect, not with loudness, not with strategy, but with presence, that quiet, unbothered, grounded presence that says, words, I don't need to chase what's already meant for me. You don't attract a man's devotion through effort, backwards. You attract it through energy, and energy doesn't lie. You can say you're confident, backwards. You can say you're high value, backwards. You can post quotes about self, worth, and boundaries all day long. But if your energy is still saying, words, I hope he picks me, it will betray you every time. Real magnetism is not loud. It's subtle. Backwards. It's the energy of a woman who has nothing to prove. Who can be in the same room as him and not need to speak to be noticed? Words. Who can go days without reaching out and still occupy his mind? Words. Because her value is not in how often she shows up. It's in who she is when she does. That kind of energy shakes a man. It unsettles him in the best way, Woods. Because he's used to being chased. He's used to being needed. He's used to being the prize, Woods. But when he meets you and you don't chase, you don't perform, you don't overextend, Woods. His ego is confused, but his soul is captivated. Because you are not like the others. Backwards. You are not trying to win him. You are trying to witness him. To observe, Words. To see if he's worthy of your world. And that flips the dynamic completely, Words. You become magnetic when you stop giving access to everyone who wants your time. Backwards. When you stop explaining yourself. Backwards. When you stop asking for clarity from people who already showed you their chaos. Woods. When you stop entertaining men who text inconsistently, show up half present. Backwards. Or give you just enough to stay hopeful, but never enough to feel secure. Woods. You become magnetic when your energy says, I am not available for anything less than clarity. Woods. Consistency and emotional maturity. And the moment you fully embody that, Words, you will start to see a shift in the way men show up. The boys will fall away. Words. The players will disappear. The confused will ghost. Backwards. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your energy no longer feeds their games. Words. And the ones who remain, they are the ones who feel your worth without you having to say a word. Backwards. That's the power of not chasing. That's the power of being. Every time you choose to chase, Woods, you abandon yourself. You step out of your feminine energy and into the role of the pursuer, Woods. And the more you chase, the more he pulls away. It's not personal. It's energetic, Woods. Masculine energy is designed to seek, to hunt, to pursue. When you do all the work for him, Words, you rob him of the experience of discovering your depth. You make it too easy. You remove the mystery. Backwards. You interrupt the natural tension that builds attraction. Because contrary to what you've been told, Words, the strongest relationships are not built on constant access. They're built on earned connection, Woods. He needs to feel your absence to appreciate your presence. He needs to wonder about you, Woods, to work for your time, to stretch into your standards. Backwards, and when he does, when he rises instead of retreats, he connects with a deeper part of himself, Woods. That part that wants to protect, to cherish, to commit. Backwards. But he can only access that part of himself when you stop trying to force the connection and allow it to flow. Backwards. You're not cold for pulling back. You're not rude for not replying instantly, Woods. You're not mean for saying no. You are simply aligned. And the more you stay in alignment backwards, the more you will attract people who match it, not by accident, not by effort, but by frequency wards. Because when a woman stops chasing, the universe starts responding. It sends you different men wards, different experiences, different energy, and suddenly, words, love no longer feels like pressure. It feels like peace. It feels like being met, like being chosen. Not because you begged for it, but because you became it. That's when the shift happens. It sounds backwards. That's when he starts thinking about you differently. He starts wondering what you're doing wards, who you're with, why you're not reaching out. And he starts to realize you are not like the rest. Backwards. You are not available for emotional breadcrumbs. You are not available for part-time love wards. You are not available for almost, someday, maybe. You are available for devotion wards. And anything less doesn't touch you. When you embody this energy, you become a portal, a mirror, a magnet. You activate the king in him, or you expose the coward. You invite the man to step upwards, or you allow him to step aside. But what you no longer do is chase, because you've learned the truth wards. That love doesn't grow through pursuit. It grows through power. Not the kind that dominates words, but the kind that radiates. The kind that says, I know who I am words, and I will not beg anyone to see it. That's the kind of power that makes a man fall. Not just for your beauty words, but for your presence, your energy, your essence. It doesn't mean you play games backwards. It doesn't mean you withhold love or act distant. It means you no longer leak energy trying to be enough. You stop proving, pushing, explaining. You become soft but strong, warm but wise, open but discerning, and that balance wards. That grounded feminine presence, that is what magnetizes the masculine backwards. That is what makes a man want to chase you. Not because you're out of reach wards, but because you're worth reaching for. And he'll know it. Not because you told him backwards, but because he felt it every time you walked away from what wasn't aligned wards. So let them think you're hard to get. Let them say you're too much wards. Let them call you high maintenance. You are not here to be convenient. You are here to be chosen backwards. And chosen women don't chase. They remember who they are backwards. They remember that the right man doesn't need convincing backwards. The right man will feel your worth in your silence, your absence, your refusal to settle backwards. He'll feel it in the way you pull back when you're not respected words, in the way you glow even when you're alone, in the way you move through the world with or without him words. That's what makes you unforgettable words. That's what makes him come back. Not because he misses your attention words, but because he finally understands your value. So stop chasing. Not because it's a strategy. Backwards. but because it's a standard. You don't need to chase love when you've become the embodiment of it. Words. You don't need to force connection when your energy is already aligned with truth. Words. The more you relax into your worth, the more love finds you. The more you trust your vibe. Words. The less you have to fight for validation. The more you let go of what isn't meant for you. Words. The more room you make for what is. And the man who is aligned, the man who is ready. Words. The man who is done playing games, he will feel you before he sees you. Words. He will pursue you without pressure. He will honor you without hesitation. Not because you begged. Words. But because you believed in yourself enough to stop chasing and start choosing. Because here's the final truth. You don't chase what belongs to you backwards. You don't beg for what sees your value. You don't run after what's running from you. Words. You sit in your energy. You heal. You rise. And when the time is right, what's meant for you will find you. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. Words. That is magnetism. That is power. That is how real love begins.